Today's breaking news: two former Chinese defense ministers, Wei Fenghe and Li Shangfu, have both been sentenced to death with a 2-year reprieve. Both individuals were convicted of accepting bribes. As for Li Shangfu, he was also convicted of offering bribes. He was sentenced to have all his personal assets confiscated. After the 2-year reprieve period for his death sentence, it will be commuted to life imprisonment, with no possibility of sentence reduction or parole. In other words, these two have been spared their lives, but they will spend the rest of their days in prison with no hope of release. This is an unprecedentedly severe punishment since the founding of the Chinese Communist regime. Even Zhou Yongkang, who once plotted to seize power from the party, was only sentenced to life imprisonment, and Guo Boxiong, who together with Xu Kaihe accepted over 20 billion yuan in bribes, also received only a life sentence. But this time, the two ministers of defense have pushed the punishment for fallen high-ranking CCP officials to the ceiling, a suspended death sentence combined with life imprisonment. How should we interpret this strange and rare verdict? In the next 20 minutes, we'll follow the timeline to unravel all the hidden currents behind this in one go. Trust me, by the end, we'll reach a point that will leave everyone gasping in shock. Let's turn back the clock to the summer of 2023. In March 2023, Li Shangfu took over the seal of the Chinese Minister of Defense from Wei Fenghe. At the time, his resume was impressive. He was a second-generation Red, with a father who had participated in the Long March as a Red Army soldier. He served as the commander of the Xichang Satellite Launch Center for 10 years, overseeing more than half of China's space launches, and later rose all the way to become the head of the Central Military Commission's Equipment Development Department. It was Xi Jinping himself who personally promoted him from a member of the Central Military Commission all the way up to State Councillor and Minister of Defense. However, just over 4 months after taking office, he suddenly vanished from the public eye. His last public appearance was on August 29, 2023, when he attended the 3rd China-Africa Peace and Security Forum in Beijing. And it wasn't just him. 1 month earlier, Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Gang had also disappeared. China's Minister of Defense and Minister of Foreign Affairs both disappeared in quick succession during that summer, and the authorities didn't say a single word about it. The first to notice was then US Ambassador to Japan, Rahm Emanuel. He said that the circle around Xi Jinping was just like Agatha Christie's novel, and then there were none. First it was Foreign Minister Qin Gang, then the commander of the rocket force, and now Defense Minister Li Shangfu, who hasn't been seen in 2 weeks. So who will be the last one standing? This remark of his went viral on foreign social media at the time, and everyone was speculating about where they had gone. Some said that Li Shangfu was involved in corruption while serving as Minister of the Equipment Development Department and ended up being reported. Others said he identified 8 generals within the equipment system. An even more sensitive version is that they were involved in a larger rocket force leak case. Here, we need to insert some information about the rocket force, because it will come up repeatedly later on. 2 months before Li Shangfu disappeared, former Naval Lieutenant Colonel Yao Cheng revealed on X that at that time, Rocket Force Commander Li Yuchao had already been taken away during a meeting in his office. Immediately after that, it was reported that Rocket Force Deputy Commander Liu Guangbin and former Deputy Commander Zhang Zhenzhong had also been placed under control. Later, in July, an obituary surfaced, stating that former Rocket Force Deputy Commander Wu Guohua had passed away in Beijing. The paper initially confirmed his death, but a few hours later, they urgently deleted the post. Later, informed sources revealed that this former deputy commander had hanged himself. These were the unusual developments within the Chinese military before Li Shangfu disappeared. It seems that all signs were pointing to the Rocket Force, the elite unit personally established by Xi Jinping. Finally, 3 weeks after Li Shangfu's disappearance, at the end of August 2023, Ministry of Defense spokesperson Wu Qian responded to reporters' questions for the first time. He did not directly answer where Li Shangfu had gone, only stating that the fight against corruption is always ongoing, that any corruption will be punished, and that they are determined to win both the tough and protracted battles. This was effectively the first time the authorities tacitly acknowledged that something had happened to Li Shangfu. A sitting defense minister at the vice-national level suddenly disappears, and instead of saying he is at work or has health issues, the authorities mention anti-corruption. The message behind this is self-evident. So what about Wei Fenghe at this point? He has already been away from the position of defense minister for more than half a year. Since stepping down in March 2023, he has not made any public appearances. At first, everyone thought he was just a retired veteran living a normal, low-profile life. It wasn't until something happened to Li Shangfu that people suddenly realized, hey, it's been a long time since we've seen Wei Fenghe. On September 21, 2023, Wei Fenghe was officially placed under investigation by the Central Military Commission's Discipline Inspection Commission. But note, this piece of information was not released by any official source at the time. It was only traced back and revealed more than a year later. It was only in a 2024 report from the Chinese Communist Party that the outside world learned that, as it turns out, 3 weeks after Li Shangfu was placed under investigation, Wei Fenghe was also taken in. At the end of that year, the National People's Congress stripped 9 generals of their representative qualifications in one go, including 3 former commanders of the Rocket Force, Zhou Yanning, Li Yuchao, and the unnamed Wei Fenghe. By this point, all 3 former commanders of the Rocket Force since its establishment had been brought down. Entering 2024, even more bizarre signals began to emerge. First, at the beginning of the year, there was a cultural performance to visit retired senior military officials, but Wei Fenghe was absent. In February, Xinhua News Agency released a list of names, those whom Xi Jinping visited on the eve of the Spring Festival, including retired cadres at the vice-national level and above. Wei Fenghe was also not on this list. All these signals kept confirming that something had happened to Wei Fenghe. But 2 months later, the situation suddenly took a turn. On April 30th, Wu Yunqimuge, former vice-chairman of the National People's Congress, passed away. In May, his remains were cremated at Baba Oshan Cemetery. In the footage of the farewell ceremony broadcast by CCTV, there was a name among those who sent wreaths that shocked everyone: Wei Fenghe. He also appeared in the Chinese Communist Party's official media under his former title of State Councillor. For a time, the outside world speculated that he had most likely handed over his illicit gains in exchange for safety and had managed to get out of the turmoil. However, this was just an illusion. A month and a half later, the CCP Politburo held a meeting and approved 2 reports regarding the handling of Li Shangfu and Wei Fenghe. Both men were expelled from the party and the military, stripped of their general ranks, and their qualifications as delegates to the 20th Party Congress were revoked. Their suspected criminal issues have already been handed over to the military procuratorate for prosecution. In this report, there was a sentence that made waves. It said that Wei Fenghe's faith had collapsed and his loyalty had failed. If you enter these 4 characters, loyalty failed, into Baidu Baike and search, it shows that the entry has not yet been included. In other words, this is not a standard term commonly used by the Central Commission for Discipline Inspection. In all the reports about provincial, ministerial and vice-national level officials who have fallen since the 18th Party Congress, the phrase loyalty failed has never appeared. In the reports about Xu Kaihe and Guo Boxiong back then, the terms used were serious circumstances and egregious impact, but not loyalty failed. Even Bo Xilai, Zhou Yongkang and Ling Jihua, those officially recognized as plotting to usurp the party and seize power, were not labeled with the term loyalty failed. And in the context of the CCP, these 4 words naturally bring to mind only 2 people. One is Xiang Zhongfa, the early CCP General Secretary, who defected after being captured by the Kuomintang in 1931, and the other is Gu Shunzheng, who betrayed the CCP's special branch to the Kuomintang. So Wei Fenghe's faith collapsed and his loyalty failed. What exactly did he do? Let's keep watching, it will be explained later. This marks the first obvious change in the official media's rhetoric, from the formulaic phrases like the fight against corruption is always ongoing, to the accusation of loss of loyalty, a charge so rare that it's not even recorded in the Baidu dictionary. Over the next 2 years, the CCP military saw its largest high-level purge, from November 2024, when General Miao Hua was investigated, to just before the October 2025 plenary session. The Defense Ministry announced 9 generals had fallen, including He Weidong, Miao Hua, and others, all Xi loyalists. Finally, at the beginning of this year, the big bosses in the military, Zhang Yuxia and Liu Zhenli, were arrested. Now, in the 7-member Central Military Commission of the CCP, only Xi Jinping and the political commissar Zhang Shunmin, who helped him arrest people, remain. So, looking at the entire 3-year timeline, Wei Fenghe and Li Shangfu are not just 2 corrupt defense ministers who fell from power, they are the first 2 sacrifices in what can be called the largest military purge since the founding of the CCP regime. After them, many people have yet to be officially charged, but just judging from the sentences given to these first 2 sacrifices, it can be predicted that the CCP's use of the death penalty is about to increase significantly. Friends, do you agree? Leave a comment or give a like to let me know. So, were Li Shangfu and Wei Fenghe really given such heavy sentences just for bribery and corruption? That is certainly a reason, but it is by no means the only one. Within the CCP system, we all know that corruption is systemic. Corruption is a catch-all crime, and anyone can be caught for it. In the military, it's an open secret that people get promoted while being corrupt. 10 years ago, according to foreign media reports at the time, Xu Kaihe and Guo Boxiong together embezzled over 20 billion yuan, and the positions of generals were openly sold at set prices. After 10 years of anti-corruption efforts, the chain of buying and selling official positions has not only remained unbroken, but has actually become more sophisticated. At the end of October 2025, a mysterious public account on the mainland called Fengxiang Observation revealed that in the procurement of tyres for a certain model of missile launch vehicle in the rocket force, the original budget for each tyre was 180,000 yuan, but under the manipulation of Wei Fengke and his deputy, the price was forcibly raised to an astonishing 380,000 yuan. The enormous price difference of 200,000 yuan per tyre was later laundered by them through shell companies set up by their relatives in Hong Kong and ended up in their private pockets. There was also a deal involving the Dongfeng 31AG simulation training software. The exposé, citing the so-called verdict, said that in order to cover his tracks, Wei Fengke forcibly split the entire military project into 12 subcontracts, subcontracting them layer by layer, and in the end, they actually ended up in the hands of an outsourcing contractor under the American military-industrial giant Lockheed Martin. This tactic of breaking up the whole into parts brought Wei Fengke an astronomical illicit gain of 1.74 billion, as well as a hillside villa in Los Angeles, USA. The most dramatic moment in the exposé is when, after happily taking possession of the house in Los Angeles, Wei Fengke's son sent his father a WeChat voice message saying, "Dad, we've got the house. Can the source code for that simulation training software be sent out now?" As a result, this conversation involving national defense secrets was intercepted by the FBI. Later, it was sent back to Beijing through mysterious channels and became an audio recording played in court, serving as irrefutable evidence that sealed Wei Fengke's conviction. This exposé, however, cannot be verified by any independent media. With so many details, I doubt its authenticity. So, friends, just treat it as a story and enjoy it. However, there is no doubt that both Wei Fengke and Li Shangfu, having reached such high positions, must have been involved in bribery and corruption. But bribery and corruption alone could not have resulted in such record-breaking heavy sentences. There must be unspeakable political crimes involved as well. Otherwise, how did the charge of betrayal of loyalty come about? This brings us to the rocket force leak case, which shocked the world at the time. The starting point of this incident goes back to October 24, 2022. On this day, a US Congressional Research Agency and the Pentagon both publicly released a detailed 255-page intelligence report on the Chinese Communist Party's rocket force. This report covered the rocket force's structure, base coordinates, and ammo depot sites, even naming all commanders, family addresses, and children's schools in detail. You have to understand, the rocket force is the Chinese Communist Party's most highly classified nuclear strike unit, equipped with nuclear warheads and intercontinental ballistic missiles. Once this more than 200-page report was made public, it was equivalent to laying all of the CCP's nuclear assets out on the table. Within the CCP, this is undoubtedly the most significant leak since the founding of its military. In Xi Jinping's mind, the rocket force is the sharpest weapon in his dream of building a strong military. The story of the rocket force begins with one man, Qian Shuisen. In 1956, when Qian Shuisen returned from the United States, he proposed an idea. At the time, he told the Central Military Commission that the Chinese people were fully capable of building rockets on their own, so he suggested establishing a new military branch dedicated to rocket weaponry, which could be called the Rocket Corps. That name ultimately wasn't used, but 10 years later, in 1966, the Central Military Commission officially approved the establishment of the 2nd Artillery Corps, known as Air POW for short. Under the direct leadership of the Ministry of National Defense, this strategic force was equipped with nuclear weapons and conventional missiles. For a full 49 years, the 2nd Artillery Corps remained hidden in the deepest part of the secrecy system. It wasn't until December 2015 that Xi Jinping personally handed the military flag of the 2nd Artillery Corps to a newly named force, the Rocket Force. It was officially elevated from a strategically independent branch to a fully independent military service, standing on equal footing with the Army, Navy and Air Force. At that time, keep in mind, Xi Jinping had only been in power for 3 years, and the anti-corruption campaign had just removed Xu Kaihe, Guo Boxiong, Bo Xilai and Zhou Yongkang. He wanted to build an entirely new elite and loyal force that would obey him, equipped with the most powerful military and strike capabilities. This is the foundation of his dream to strengthen the military, and also the most important source of confidence for his preparations regarding the Taiwan Strait. So it was this very force which seemed to have limitless prospects and in which Xi Jinping placed his utmost trust that he entrusted to Wei Fengke to manage. Wei Fengke was a trusted confidant personally promoted by Xi Jinping when he first came to power in 2012. Back then, Xi Jinping even held a promotion ceremony to the rank of general, just for him alone, which is extremely rare in the history of the Chinese Communist military. During the eras of Jiang Zemin and Hu Jintao, it was usually several generals being promoted together at one time. Only Wei Fenghe was promoted individually. It felt as if the emperor was proclaiming to the world, "He is my man." It was precisely because of this that Xi Jinping entrusted such an important force as the rocket force to Wei Fenghe. But who could have predicted that just 9 years later, Xi Jinping would personally dismantle this elite force? All 4 commanders, Wei Fenghe, Zhou Yaning, Li Yuchao, and Wang Hubin, were brought down. All 5 successive chiefs of staff were implicated. Deputy commanders Zhang Zhenzhong and Liu Guangbin were taken away one after another. Former deputy commander Wu Guohua hanged himself. The head of the equipment department, Lu Hong, was arrested. The chief engineer of the research institute was dismissed, and the director of the political work department, Zhang Fengzhong, was expelled from the party. The rocket force, once the ace unit that carried Xi Jinping's dream of a strong military, collapsed just 10 years after its establishment. This is truly perplexing. What exactly did the rocket force do to make Xi Jinping come down on them so hard? The only visible clue to the outside world is just those 8 characters in the 2024 report, Collapse of Faith, Loss of Loyalty. Some say that someone inside the rocket force deliberately leaked secrets, because over the years, the top brass of the rocket force have made astronomical sums through equipment procurement and buying and selling positions. None of them have clean hands. Once the anti-corruption campaign targets these people, what awaits them is the same fate as Xu Kaihu and Guo Boxiong. But if the entire deployment of the rocket force, the coordinates of its bases, and the list of commanders are all made public by the United States, then many more people will be implicated. In this way, what was originally a targeted purge of a few top officials could turn into a collective mess that no one can escape from. But when the law does not punish the masses, the murkier the water, the safer it is for everyone. That's one way of looking at it. However, given today's outcome, the theory that secrets were deliberately leaked to save themselves doesn't really hold water. So at most, it can only be considered a speculative motive and cannot explain everything. Because the possibility that Xi Jinping wiped out the entire rocket force due to a leak is actually greater than that of anti-corruption or corruption itself. But I don't think that's the whole truth either. Friends, do you still remember what we mentioned earlier? After Wei Fenghe got into trouble, a fact that was widely believed at the time, he briefly appeared in public by sending a funeral wreath. You have to understand that within the CCP, internal struggles are always bloody and brutal, full of intrigue and unpredictability. Every day could see a fierce battle between Xi Jinping and anti-Xi forces, with their fortunes constantly rising and falling. Whether it's corruption or leaking secrets, behind it all lies the same thing: political purges. Since Xi Jinping came to power in 2012, the top ranks of the CCP have undergone 2 rounds of large-scale purges. The first round lasted 3 years, from the second half of 2013 to the first half of 2016, mainly focusing on the military and targeting people within Zhou Yongkang's circle. A long list of high-ranking military tigers were taken down, with a total of 105 people falling from power. The second peak began with the disappearance of Qin Gang and Li Shangfu in 2023, and this wave has continued up to now. 3 years have passed and it still hasn't ended. By the end of last year, a total of 154 people had fallen from power, surpassing the first peak. During the peak of the first anti-corruption wave, the average amount involved per senior official, according to the CCP's own reports, was 46.74 million yuan. In this second wave, that figure has already reached 165 million yuan. The number of people who have fallen in the second wave is 1.5 times that of the first, and the average amount involved is 3.5 times higher. The scale of corruption in the CCP officialdom is thus imaginable. If we look at the total over the past 12 years, the verifiable amount involved for these 406 senior officials has already exceeded 300 billion yuan. As for the cases since the second half of 2024, almost all are still under trial and the amounts involved have not yet been disclosed. The focus of these 2 so-called anti-corruption political purges has been the military. But the difference is that the first round of purges took place not long after Xi Jinping came to power. It was carried out so that he could fully control the military and eliminate the Jiang faction members within the army who were attempting to usurp the party and seize power. The second time, however, he is essentially wielding the knife against his own arm, toppling in batches a large number of generals whom he himself had promoted during the Xi Jinping era. What could have made him do this? The outside world may never be able to uncover the truth. But what is certain is that he is very reckless. In the 76 years since the founding of the CCP regime, this is the first time that 2 consecutive ministers of defense have been sentenced to death with reprieve. Out of the 7 members of the Central Military Commission, 5 have been brought down, leaving only 2, and new appointments have yet to be made. This is the first time this has happened. For a major branch of the military, all 4 consecutive commanders have been brought down. This too is unprecedented. Who will be next? No one knows. But from now on, the trend of convictions among the top ranks of the CCP will only continue to escalate, with more and more sentences of death with reprieve. The unwritten rule set by Chen Yun, that the death penalty would not be applied to the core political circle, has now been broken. No wonder, on the eve of Trump's visit to China, the CIA released a new Chinese language recruitment video aimed at recruiting high-level CCP spies. With the red tide receding, the drama ahead will only become more and more exciting. Subscribe to True Perspective, and let's follow and track these developments together. Alright, what do you all think? Do you have any insights regarding the sentencing of Wei Fenghe and Li Shangfu this time? Or do you think that the only somewhat valuable scraps of information the CCP has revealed so far, betrayal of loyalty, are actually just about the Rocket Force leak case? If you have anything to say, leave a comment and share it with me. Alright, thank you all for watching. If you like my program, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. And I also welcome you to share my program with more of your friends. Alright, thank you all for watching. We'll see you very soon on Gen Guandian. Don't miss it. Bye bye.